thank you all for being here. The press conference with Tár. I'm just going to introduce our guests. To my left, the film's composer, Hildur Guðnadóttir. Sophie Kauer, who plays Olga. Writer-director, Todd Field. Hoss. And Cate Blanchett. Congratulations to all of you from the film. I'll start with a question for Todd. I guess it's a standard question about how this film came about and what the origin was, but I'm really curious about whether there was a precise starting point for you, because it's such a vivid character study, but the film also has such a richly imagined world, and it has, I think, a lot of just thematic resonance in terms of what's going on in the world today, but it also engages like larger, more timeless questions. So I'm wondering where in this studio did you start?
Well, I guess a couple of things. There's some things I've been thinking about for a while, and I had this idea for this character in a fashion for quite a while, I was sort of given enough rope to hang myself. Kiske His and Peter Kudowski at Focus Features kind of told me I could write anything I wanted to write. And it was the beginning of the pandemic, right in March of 2020, and it felt kind of, I didn't know if it was really mattered, if there would be movies. So that was we were all trying to survive, and people were sick and dying, and we were, trying to think about how to get groceries and things like that. And so it came very quickly once I started. I didn't. My background really is in jazz, and but as Hildur will tell you, it's all the same, sort of making noise. But in terms of trying to get the sort of backdrop for this correct, that was very important to me. We've all seen movies about things that we say, well, that's not probably how it is. Like you said, movies about movies. No, that's not really how you make movies, And so I needed to kind of do a little homework. Unfortunately, the great John Mancheri, who's a wonderful writer, but also had been Lenny Bernstein's assistant for many years, and taught at Yale, and written several fine books that I recommend, was available. He kind of gave me a very crash course education over several weeks about what I should read and what I should do, and answered very practical questions for me in terms of things that I wanted to have happen, or needed to have happen, if they were plausible or not.
It sounds like the starting point was the character of Lydia Tár.
Yeah, it was a character, and that character was somebody that, in this case, she happened to be at the top of a power structure that was very clear and definable how that pyramid works. But it could have she could have been anything. She could have been head of a multinational corporation or an arts foundation, or you name it.
I've heard that you wrote the role for Cate. At what point did you speak to her? Did you reach out to her? Was it with a finished script, or did you write the whole script with her in mind?
I wrote the entire script with her in mind. She didn't know that. I've told this story before, so I apologize for everybody who's heard it up here. But Yeah, no, I'd never written for an actor in mind, and but I also hadn't written an original script since I got out of film school in 1995. And you never normally have the opportunity. I mean, like I said, in this case, you know, Peter and Kiska said, write whatever you want. People, they don't do that. There's always IP attached, you know. So there wasn't really. So when you're adapting literary material, it's kind of often just as a practical matter best to keep these figures as literary figures in your head. And if you're thinking of an actor, it's probably deducted from something you've seen them do before. But Kate and I had talked about doing a film with Joan Didion many years ago, 10 years ago, and we met here in New York, and that was a very very meaningful meeting for me personally, just because of Kate's intellect and her soul and her heart, and the way that she looks at narrative. It's very holistic and complete, and I really wanted to collaborate with her, and so for whatever reason, you know, this is the first time I knew it was her, so I put a post-it note on my desk that said Kate, you know, I would show up at my desk every day and say, "Good morning, Kate," you know, get to work. And so it was like, you know, 3 months later I handed the script in, and Peter and Kiska said, "Do you have anyone in mind for this role?" And I said, "No, absolutely not. I have no idea who it is." They said, "Well, have you thought about it? Should we send you some lists?" I was like, no, I'm still kind of thinking about it. Because I was very superstitious, you know. And then finally my wife said, "You know, I think you better call Kate." You know. And then things happened very quickly. We got in a conversation immediately, and we worked for nearly a year before we were actually on the ground together in Berlin.
Kate, what was your response to the script?
Well, like Todd said, we had this kind of resonant, meaningful meeting a decade ago, and I hadn't forgotten that. And obviously, you know, I've been so altered by Todd's films, and it's a rarity that he leaves home and goes and makes a movie. So you know, it's going to be a very considered event. You know, that he's going to have. He doesn't put himself out there unless he has something to say. And I think that this film has so much to say. There's so many questions here that I think it really respects its audience. It asks fun questions and answers, and so I mean, the process would be really exciting. I mean, I've never read a screenplay like it. It was like a musical score. It was so rhythmic, and every character had their own rhythm and intonation and dynamics, and I felt like there was a kind of an aching sort of metaphysical tragedy at the center of it that I didn't know where to begin. And so our initial conversations were intensely practical, because there was a lot that we both had to do, I think, in order to get to first base, in order to make the film, in order for me to play the character. And then once Todd started to assemble this amazing ensemble of people, you knew it had a chance to be something really special.
Can you say a little bit about some of that preparation? I mean, Todd talked about just immersing himself in the details of his world. You obviously had to do quite a bit of that as well to play the part. I also noticed in the credits that you were actually performing some of that.
Yeah, I was.
All of it.
I wasn't doing the conducting, lip syncing version of it. Yeah, no, I think at its heart, that every single element, and this is a testament to who Todd is, not only as a filmmaker but as a human being, he's more than any filmmaker that I've ever met. He's authentic with a capital A, and I think you were talking initially about the filmmaking style being fly on the wall, but it's obviously a rehearsal movie. It's not a performance movie. And so, we've all seen those movies about painters, about writers, about musicians, and you go, please God, don't turn the canvas around, because I know that you're not really a painter. And so we didn't want to do that version of it. So it was really important for me, I think, that, and I'm sure it was with you too, Nina, when you're a musician, Sophie, but that we had to be able to truly hold our own with the musicians who were asked to act. And as actors, we had to become as close as possible musicians. And it was through really, turning the Mahler's Fifth Symphony for me inside out and listening to it non-stop 24/7 for a year, all of his symphonies and all of his influences and all the people who have been influenced by him, that I felt that I could begin to approach the role, because there was something contained within the symphony itself, and learning to read that score in a kind of a vertical as well as a horizontal way, that I began to understand who she was and her terrifying magnificence. It was through music.
I wanted to bring the other actors into it as well. I mean, I think, as you mentioned, Kate, the ensemble is so important. I think you learn so much about Lydia from all her relationships and interactions. So maybe we'll start with Nina. I think the idea of Kate and Nina together is inspired and very exciting. I think it's just a pairing of, two actors who obviously you both have done a lot of film work, but you've also done a lot of theater, and I feel like there's a certain kinship in the kind of work you're both drawn to, and I think the kind of acting you do. So I'd love to hear about this pairing of Kate and Nina.
Well, it was exactly that, It was just so great. I mean, I know all her work, I couldn't show what I find. But so I was like, oh my God, I get to work with her, It was so exciting already. And to see what she does with this character, to look into her eyes, to see something's happening, we can, every moment, every scene we do, something will happen, and it's because we know what we're looking for. I saw the way she works is exactly how I want to work and how I strive to do things, and that is just so inspiring and so gives you so much, because she takes risks, she's bold, she makes choices where you go, so I'm just very, I was so inspired by her anyway, by her work, but especially when working with her, and I truly hope this is not it. And it's just wonderful that Todd had this idea.
But can I just say, that when Nina came on board, the conversation for me, the creative conversation, was so elevated by all of the elements that Todd brought to bear, from Mona Willi, an incredible editor, but also in particular, early on with Nina, is that when you came on board, the insight that you brought into Sharon's complicity in maintaining the power structure that is Tár and the world in which Tár is able to operate, really kind of blew up a whole section of the film that I don't think I previously thought of before. And I mean, it's so great to work with an actor who is meticulous and inspired in the way that they create a role, but is so invested in the whole, not just their part within it, which is.
I'd love to hear a bit more about that, actually, because, as you say, Kate, I think it's a film that poses more questions than answers, and this, I think there's a lot of very productive ambiguity around the characters and their relationships, and I'm wondering, was there a lot of conversation about backstories and motivations and histories and all that, which are not, they're not on screen, but they're all kind of implied and submerged.
We talked in very fairly specific detail about backstory and about who these characters were, specifically when it came to Lydia and Sharon, about how we met, how we got together, what that sort of romance was like, how we made decisions together, and mainly about what that sort of covenant that they had in terms of how they shared power and how power went back and forth between them. And again, like Kate was saying, that was a sort of a very, very instantaneous sort of wake-up call. The first time that I spoke with Nina, which is, she said, yes, I want to do this. But there's one scene here, and I think maybe perhaps you might want to do this a bit differently, is the way she very nicely put it. And out of that conversation was born many, many more conversations between the three of us in terms of what is that relationship, how does that relationship function, and why is that relationship so important to the story.
I was so inspired by working on the violin. I, of course, had a lot of conversations with my teacher about Mahler, like Kate had with her coach. And you dive into that world, and I started reading about his wife, Alma Mahler, because I thought, there might be something there. And that's what inspired all of us. I think that this kind of, there is always, who is the partner of a genius? There is a certain trait of a personality that is not innocent. They want something from that partnership as well. And I found all of that in the script that was there. But it was great that we could all work on getting it out a bit more. Yeah, that's just a little.
What do they call in politics a kingmaker?
Yeah.
Kingmaker.
It's not a kingmaker. Yeah.
Queenmaker.
Sophie, maybe we'll bring you into this. Sophie is not Russian. Todd, can you talk a little bit about casting Sophie, and maybe Sophie can see your experience working as well. You are a cellist.
Yeah.
Well, it seemed like such a simple idea, that everybody that's on screen that's making music should actually be making music. While musicians and dancers and anyone in the sort of performing arts, these are sort of sometimes very fluid, interchangeable disciplines because they require the same sort of sensitivities and abilities having to do with sound and rhythm and things like that. So it seemed like a very sensible idea that we'd be able to find this brilliant young cellist who's Russian. So Adi Kaufman and her assistant, Bridget Whitcomb, sort of took this on. And after months of looking at hundreds and hundreds of cellists, we hadn't found anyone for different reasons. We found some wonderful cellists, we found some people that could kind of act, and then finally we got desperate because as sort of generous as Peter and Kiska were about the script, the casting budget was beginning to dwindle a little bit. We had, I think, a week left. And this video sort of arrived from the clouds. And Adi said, you might want to take a look at this. There's this 19-year-old from Norway. And there was this Russian. And I watched her play these scenes, and they were top-notch. I said, maybe you might want to have her back, because she played the cello. And she goes, oh yeah, I think she plays the cello. I said, well, do you think you might be able to have her play an excerpt from the Elgar? Oh yeah, I'll ask. And then this excerpt arrives, and it's like, oh, wow, oh, amazing. And so, she came back in, we had a call back, and we played the scenes. But of course, the first question I asked her was, do you speak Russian? She said, no. I said, well, how did you do the accent? She said, YouTube. So, we got very lucky to make Sophie's acquaintance, and that she agreed to do this. It was a lot for her to take on. She'd never acted before, obviously. She had some fairly heavy company, not to mention that she's in a movie scored by one of the great cellists, living cellists and composers that we have. I think she's pretty extraordinary in the film.
Too lovely. Yeah, I think he told it basically. I applied for it and I didn't really. It was actually my friend who made me apply. We got like a casting call in, I think a school Facebook group or something like that. And I'm really not active on Facebook. I'm getting better, don't worry. But a friend sent it to me and she was like, you have to apply because I want to, and I don't play the cello. I was like, right, okay. So I had zero expectations the whole way through, and I just thought, oh god, this is going to be so cool. I can tell my grandchildren that I did a Zoom audition with Todd Field. Like, how cool is that? And I remember no one actually told me explicitly that I got the part. It was all like, oh, you're at the top of a very short list, or you've been approved by the studio, and I had no idea what that meant. And then Todd and Amy rang me to kind of start introducing me to the script, and oh, and I was like, oh, have I actually got the part? Yeah, did no one say? But it was amazing, and then suddenly I found myself in Berlin, surrounded by the greatest actors and directors and composers of all time, and I mean, it's been the best of both worlds, really. Hard to say that many projects could top this one, to be quite honest.
Okay, before I open it up, I want to bring Hildur into the conversation, and maybe Hildur and Todd, you could say a little bit about your collaboration. It goes without saying, music is important in this film. So, can you talk a little bit about like, what your touchstones and what your ideas were as you shaped this film?
Should I go? You want to go?
Yeah. How long do we have?
No, it was, music was very important in this film, very, very important. And it was just so, I was so thrilled when Todd asked me to get involved, because it's a rare opportunity as a composer to get to work on a process film about music, because a lot of the times as a composer you're kind of you're often asked to like underscore, you're highlighting emotions, so you're definitely ending up with a finished process, product of finished cues or finished pieces of music. But in this case, we really got to dive into what it is to compose, what it is to listen when you compose, what it is to rehearse, what it is to practice, what it is to stray away from your creative alignment and get stuck in another world. And there was just so incredibly many juicy aspects of the practice of composing and producing music that it was such a privilege to get to dive into. Because for me personally, that's probably the part of music that I'm more interested in than the finished product, because I think behind every piece of music that you hear, there's just decades of practice, there's decades of preparation to get to the point that you actually listen to it. Like we were talking about this morning in another interview, it's like what happens in rehearsal when you're rehearsing with a group of people, journey that everyone goes through musically, because through music you're communicating beyond words, so it's a form of when you're practicing with other people, it's a kind of form of transformational communication, and it's really it's very strong, and this point of in rehearsals, the point when you feel like everything is really like coming together and the music really starts to blossom, like for me that's where the real beauty of music lies. It's not the perfect take, it's how you got there. It's so interesting. And specifically in this case, Lydia Tár is not only rehearsing music, she's also composing music. So when we're looking at the kind of the process of how do we communicate the way of internally hearing the music before you write it, you know, so you have to feel it, and so you don't really hear it, because when you're writing music, you know, you have these melodies or textures or something that you hear internally. There's not a voice necessarily or an instrument, but it's a feeling of the music, you know, and how do you portray that, you know, visually in the way that you feel it. So it was really important for us to write that music really early on. So Todd and I had lots of meetings before they started shooting, which wasn't one was like location scouting, you know, so we kind of tempo mapped the whole film, and we had like, you know, BPMs for each character, like, you know, the tempo that they were walking in, the tempo that they were kind of, you know, writing in, the tempo that they're rehearsing in, and then so we had this overarching tempo map of the film, and then I wrote the music to accompany that, so we could all listen to that music, and we could hear that music. So that music is in the delicate kind of subconscious DNA of the film, even though the audience is not hearing it, you know, but hopefully they will feel it, they will feel the tempo. You know. And then, of course, I wrote the music that she writes in the film, so we would have conversations about how, you know, or very badly try to explain how it is to compose music and how it is to, you know, to hear it and to sit with it like this, because that's a very delicate and personal process that you don't really share that much with people. So that was you know, really interesting and beautiful process for me as a composer to get to share with this beautiful actor.
Well, I mean, it's an unusual situation, which is, you know, as Hildur said, most of the time, you know, it's a pre-circumcised kind of situation, which is the process is, you know, A, B, C, D, E, and E being you come in, the composer sort of inherits your sins, you know, and tries to absolve you, sort of in a way. And this was an unusual situation and a gigantic creative opportunity in terms of being able to collaborate with Hildur, because she was at A, and she was with us through the end. And so, as she said, we went through and we didn't just spot for cues, we spotted for what is the gait. For instance, if you watch Kate and you put a metronome on her, she's walking at 120 beats per minute. I mean, we shouldn't be talking about this like baseball stuff, but Sophie's walking at 60, you know, and it's sort of this contrast between sort of her older and younger self, and creatively where she is, as opposed to where, for instance, where Sophie's character is, and I mean, just again, we shouldn't really talk about all this, but I mean, we had very in-depth conversations about how we relate to music, but also how we relate to sound, and the idea that you're making a film about characters that make music, and they make music for real, and they make it on screen. So to underscore their lives would be absurd, like you putting a hat on a hat, sort of thing. So, you know, one of the things I really deeply admire about Hildur's music, and long before she was scoring, is the way that she makes very, very dense sonicscapes that work on you in a very particular manner that's not equational. And so there's a great deal of score in this film that probably based on how we mixed it, you're unaware of, but it's there nonetheless, and there's real intent behind all of that. And that took a great deal of time to sort of get. So again, it was a gigantic luxury to have that kind of continuity with a composer, kind of collaboration, and it was integral not just to our conversation, but to conversation with Kate and what she was doing, obviously, and all the way through into July when we actually recorded a concept album that with Kate conducting and Sophie playing with the London Symphony Orchestra, with Elgar in the same place where Giacomo Dupre played Elgar at Studio One with EMI now Abbey Road, and Hildur actually recorded what Kate's character is writing in the movie with a full orchestra. Now that'll be out on vinyl with Lydia Tár on the cover, the way that she planned in January.
Finally.